Hello everyone, welcome to the latest This Week in the Field with the Handyman in the Field. I'm Dustin, and we had an interesting week. It wasn't necessarily super busy, but we did have obviously money coming in. But the biggest thing that we were dealing with this week was onboarding the new employees. There was a lot of different things that happened with that, and obviously the employees were working as we go, right away. So we're going to dive into that. As always, we're going to dive into the jobs that we took care of for the week, the pricing that we did, the warranty work, the estimates, that kind of stuff, and then any of the other things from behind the scenes of running the business. So with that being said, let's start off with Monday. So Monday was a relatively slow day, specifically because I had a dentist appointment in the morning, and then after that, all three of the new employees that I hired were coming at about noon for what I called orientation. Now, the intention was to go over how things are organized in the truck, what tools are, because some of them don't have experience with tools, also where things are located in the shop, so that way they can find things a little bit easier without me having to explain. I understand they're not going to necessarily know automatically where everything is. However, it would be a good idea to have a general understanding of where things are located. So that was the intention of what we were supposed to be doing. I was going to plan on doing that for about 3 hours, then also walk through some of the expectations of like how we leave things clean, how we protect certain areas when we're in a customer's house, things like that. That specific morning after I got back from my dentist appointment, I was working through some of the things within the software program that I'm using for payroll. And I noticed that there was a requirement that the state of Illinois has, which is they require you to take a sexual harassment training. All of your employees have to do this. I didn't know this, but it's basically an online course or an online course for about an hour. So when they actually ended up coming at noon, I just had them work on completing that course right away because it's required to get done within the first 30 days of employment. So I figured we'll just get that taken care of, get it over and done with. Then we did the orientation. Outside of that, it was really just cleaning up the shop. A lot of what we did in here was cleaning things up, making things a little bit more tidy. You can see from my bench, there's a lot less going on there. Obviously, it's not going to stay like that, but as time progresses, things always just get built up there just because there's just so much stuff going on. So that was Monday. So no money coming in, but there was obviously the necessity of getting things done with the new employees. So Tuesday, a couple weeks ago, I was at a job. If you remember correctly, there were supposed to be 3 fence posts that were replaced. I only was able to get 1 done in a day because of the massive amount of concrete that was underneath that you couldn't see. Luckily, that job, I used AI to double check my pricing when it came to that. If I didn't, I would have been in a bad spot when it came to the amount of time / money that I made on that job. There probably still was way too much concrete in general for both of them under normal circumstances. However, I didn't end up charging the customer any additional money, mostly because it was a first-time customer. He also has a daughter who requested work. So if that goes through, then, it is what it is. But in a normal scenario, yeah, I probably should have charged a little bit more for the excessive amount of concrete. But yeah, you live and learn. Luckily, like I said, I didn't undercharge. So this time, the last time we were there, I just did the 1 fence post that was for the gate. Got that all set. We had 2 more fence posts to go, which were not gate, so I assumed there was going to be less concrete. There wasn't. Of course, worst case scenario, there was an insane amount of concrete down there. That said, the new employees, one of them was working with me from the beginning in the morning, and then the other 2 came. 2 of them are football players for the local high school, so they don't have they have camp and conditioning and training and things like that. So they're limited on how much time they can have, which for me is natural. It's a benefit for me because they can't start till a certain time. We only work until a certain time. So keeping their hours part-time is easy because of that. And now if they were able to have, if all three of them were able to have full-time availability, I guess I should say, I would have to pick and choose which ones I was using for certain projects, just because there's no way that I could probably afford to have all three of them there at the same time for every job. That said, we took care of the 2 fence posts. It did take pretty much all day because the first fence post took about half the day until the other 2 showed up. Then we were able to do the other one. But again, it was just trying to beat the heck out of the excessive amount of concrete. So that job wrapped up. Here's the before and after photos of the 2 fence posts we did this week. Overall, it wasn't necessarily like a bad job. It took forever to get the concrete out. I've had situations where you get there and there's barely any concrete in the ground, and because there's barely any concrete, it's very simple to just, hack it up. It really felt like they were putting 3 bags of concrete down for 1 fence post, which is kind of excessive, especially if they were using an auger to drill the holes for the posts. So that job was $1,200 total. But like I said, it was spread out over 2 different days. The first day I didn't have any employees with me. Jumping over to Wednesday. Wednesday was all over the place. I had my business networking group, Latip. We had a breakfast that morning that I had to dart out of there earlier than normal, just because I had to meet the electrician that I use for a project that we went to a couple weeks ago. For a porch. I'm calling it a porch enhancement, but essentially she has a porch that was closed in with windows, so it's kind of like a 3-season room. It doesn't have a heater, and she has a bunch of different things. I think I talked about the details of this, but there's leveling the floor, or there's making the floor semi-flat so you could put some flooring down. There's adding electric outlets and light fixture or boxes for light fixtures. There's painting. There's just a variety of different things to make this a more usable space. The issue was that when I sent the electrician the pictures, he looked at the pictures and thought to himself there was something wrong because she has a generator and wanted to clarify something. So it turns out there's a component missing from the electric box that needs to get installed in order to make sure that if the generator kicks on and then the power from the utility company comes back, that the generator is not pushing power back out to the utility company. More specifically, making sure that there's no power going outward, so that if someone was working on the lines, they don't get electrocuted because there's nothing preventing the power from the generator from going backwards. That's the extensive knowledge that I could explain, because I'm not an electrician. He explained it to me so that I understood. He explained it to the customer so she knew. We're going to include that with the estimate so that it can get taken care of. But yeah, that was basically the gist of that. But that was about 2 weeks ago, or I want to say that estimate was like 3 weeks ago. And the electrician, it took about a week to get the information from the electrician, and then he was out of town. So it was a very delayed process. I think it was only about 2 weeks, but nonetheless, it was a very delayed process. And I hinted at this last week, or talked about it, where you have to kind of juggle things with the subcontractors. It turns out the plumber that I contacted, he also did try to get back to me, but he sent a text message that never went through. That's the downfall of living in an area where there's areas where we don't have great reception, where messages don't always get sent through. So that's an unfortunate thing, but the plumber did get back to me. The electrician, we got that thing taken care of. So it's just this matter of getting these little things taken care of here and there. But yeah, so that'll be an estimate that I'll be putting together. I got to get that put together this weekend. Then after that, I came back to the shop, picked up one of the employees, and we went to a deck job that we did last year. So this job, to give you just a brief synopsis of this job was we replaced multiple deck boards per request, meaning we did not replace everything. We didn't touch the rails. All we did, or I don't believe we touched the rails. I think the only thing we replaced on this deck was deck boards. And essentially, the customer verified, we marked out the ones that looked really bad, told her which ones we would replace. This was 2 years ago. Marked them all, had her approve that those were the ones that she wanted replaced. And then we came back and removed all of them and then put in new deck boards for the deck. It was probably only about maybe 20% of the deck boards for the entire deck. Most of them were in not bad shape, but they were still old deck boards. Now, in a perfect scenario, you remove all the deck boards and just do new deck boards all the way across, because you're going to eventually run into issues with the older deck boards, especially if you're starting to mix them in with new ones. The customer didn't want to replace all the deck boards. They only wanted to replace certain ones that they thought were really bad. So we replaced them. We gave it a full season or a full year almost to basically have the treated wood acclimate to, leaking out the chemicals so that it could absorb the stain. She wanted a solid stain, not a transparent stain. Most staining companies in our area will not do a solid stain specifically because it never works out. They don't absorb very well into the wood. And honestly, whenever you're putting a solid type of stain on top of a flat surface that is getting traffic, you're going to run into issues where the individual boards are going to get scraped. You have chairs that rub across and stuff like that. It's like anything that you would have if you were rubbing against something on a wall or something like that. So it wasn't ideal, but again, this is what the customer wanted. Now, these are the things that you learn, and this is what comes with experience. When a customer wants something specific that is not something that you believe is the right thing, you have to make sure that you document in the estimates and in the invoices that you send over all of this information that make sure that what they're requesting is contradicting what you're telling them they should do. And the reason for this is because you need to make sure that you cover yourself so that there's not a scenario where they're coming back and saying, well, you did this and you did that and you should have taken care of that. This customer, I've done a couple of different projects for her. She can be particular, but I typically only deal with her like once or twice a year. And it's always in the summer because everything I've done for her has always been exterior projects. The very first project that I did for her was a fence repair, or it was a gate repair. She had a contractor install a fence. Something happened where settlement caused the gate to shift and she just needed the gate adjusted. And then there was some pickets that were damaged because the gate adjusted in a way where it wasn't latching and it swung and a couple of the pickets broke. So it was a very simple repair. However, the post is settling because the post isn't deep enough or there's not enough concrete. So what do you think is going to happen after a certain amount of time goes by where the post, especially the seasons, the post is going to shift again. So I basically had to go back there a second time because the gate wasn't lining up after I set it because it settled in a different direction. When I went back, I actually made an adjustment to the point where there's no way it could settle. It'll have enough movement back and forth so that doesn't happen. But again, that second trip was essentially a warranty trip for something that was outside of my control. And it's because I run my business in a way where I, try to take care of the customer, but there are certain customers that you should be watching out for with red flags where you need to draw a line. When they keep asking you to do things that you don't want to do or that you are explaining to them are not ideal for what needs to be done, you need to make sure that you cover yourself. And I say this because this is what happened. So this customer, we stained the deck last year. It was fine. There was no issues. It dried. She had no issues the entire rest of the summer. You get to the winter, you have snow, ice sitting on it. She starts using it in the spring while, of course, the deck is wet because we had a very wet spring up until about May. May was pretty dry, but April and March were very wet. And she starts using the deck, and of course, the stain is starting to scrape up in certain places. Now, is it scraping up on any of the new boards? No, it's all the old boards, of course, because the old boards it didn't adhere to because the boards are old. I'm not making excuses for that, and I told her I would take care of it. So what we ended up doing was we went out there, took a brand new gallon of stain with us, and basically touched up all of the different spots. Now, my text messages to her were specifically, I explained that this could happen. I'm not exactly sure what you want me to do because the boards that are having issues are boards that were not ones that I replaced. So it has nothing to do with the job that I did 2 years ago and got paid for, and it has nothing to necessarily do with the job I did last year, because the issue becomes, yes, I applied the stain. So yes, I acknowledge that, I chose to do that and I did get paid to do that. However, I communicated that this was going to be an issue, especially with the solid stain. So I was making sure that I reiterated all of this in text so that I could get her to understand. So then I said, how do you want me to resolve this? Because at this point, it's on old deck boards that are clearly having issues. Some of the boards now it's been 2 years since we replaced boards. There's other boards that have wider cracks, bigger issues that need to be replaced. I'm not coming in and I didn't say this part, but I was like, I'm not coming in to replace a bunch of deck boards from, a project that it's not boards that we replaced that were having issues. It was the old boards. So if you want all these boards to be replaced, that could be done, but that's not something that I'm going to do for free. So all she asked for was touching up the spots. So I will say, again, you're going to run into issues with this because when you're applying solid stain onto a surface that has solid stain already, there's going to be color differences because one's been sitting there for a year and now you're putting fresh stain on, so it's going to be brighter. Not an ideal world, but I again made sure that she understood there will be color differences. So we went out there and we touched up every spot that we could find. I sanded down a lot of the spots that had the paint that was peeling to make sure that we had good edges to get the solid stain on. I keep saying paint or stain, but it's literally it legitimately is like paint. Solid stain is essentially paint. And like I said, I've had a deck staining company that I've worked with before who has iterated that they will not do solid paint or solid colors because of how they peel. So, take that for what you will. But anyway, she was happy with the touch-ups. She got a whole gallon of stain out of the entire warranty thing because I didn't have any extra stain left over and they didn't have anything smaller than a gallon. So she got a free $50 gallon of stain that we used maybe a fifth of, maybe 20% of the can. So she's got it for touch-ups, but I explained to her, this isn't something that I'm going to keep coming back to do. So I'll leave the stain. You guys, you can touch it up if you want, but this is it. And while I was there, she was trying to get me to agree to do another project that I had already told her no to, specifically because a permit has to be pulled. And if a permit's not pulled, that town that she lives in is one of the towns in the area where if you go to sell your house and they require a town inspection to verify that the house is able to be sold. The town will come in and see that there's not a permit that was pulled for something, for this stairway, and they're going to red flag that, which is going to cause that to come back to me because I don't do any work with permits. She says, well, you don't need a permit, just do it. And it's not that simple. So I ended up referring her to a carpenter that I used in the past for some deck stuff. Whether or not that turns out, I don't have anything to do with it because there's no way I was doing that stairwell. So that was my, frustration of the week when it comes to that. After that, we met the other two employees at a third site. This is the same house that I've done. Well, a couple weeks ago, I did the reverse osmosis faucet install. I also did the vanity repair where all the vanities need to be, the bottoms need to be either replaced or repaired. That was that same house. He has a basement where they had some water penetration in various spots. So all of the carpet, the baseboards, the and 2 feet of the drywall need to get replaced. So we started the demo there, and specifically everything went smoothly. We just removed the carpet and the trim that day. Going back next week to do the drywall. So that was that day. So no money coming in on Wednesday. Thursday, we had, so I did an estimate this was almost a month ago, or maybe it was a month ago. There's an estimate that was done for a customer, the remediation company that I know from Latip, the owner of that. He gave me a referral for a customer who they were going to have to remove some issues with some framing and some drywall work in a bathroom downstairs. I did the estimate, and it was essentially supposed to be 2 feet by 2 feet, remove the existing, they were going to remove the existing drywall. There might be some framing that's involved, and then basically I was going to come in afterwards, replace the drywall, replace the framing, and then get it all set so that a painter could come in later on, or they could paint it themselves. But I'm not doing any of the painting. I wasn't requested to do the painting. The baseboard itself is a tile baseboard, so they'll have a tile person do that. But again, this has nothing to do with specifically me. However, on Monday, I got a call from the customer after a month had gone by for the estimate, and said that they had something come up out of town and they were gone for a while, but the remediation company was coming in on Monday to remove it. How quickly can I get out there to do it so that the wall could get sealed back up? I wasn't planning on going, or I wasn't obviously planning on doing this, but I had to make an adjustment to get over there because I told them I could get the work done when they originally gave me the estimate. I had more time, obviously. That's how those things work out. That said, we were able to get out there, get the framing fixed, get the drywall in place, tape mud and tape the seams, and got it to be semi-presentable for the time being. The biggest thing was they wanted to get the toilet back in place because the father-in-law lives in the house and he uses that toilet. The house only has 2 bathrooms, so in an ideal world, he's not having to go up 2 stairs or a full flight of stairs to the one other bathroom on the second floor. So we were able to get everything fixed up, and then I'll have to be going back there to do obviously the finish work of sanding and doing another coat of mud. It's probably going to take 3 coats of mud instead of 2, which is unfortunate, but that's because there was just a lot more drywall that was opened up. And again, this is another scenario where that's not what was in the original quote. I need to figure out a better way of making that work, where when they end up having to take out more, I am protected, so my estimate can be higher because of that. But that was only a first visit, so no money there. Next, I met the other, so the one employee was with me. The other employee, the other 2 employees met us at the location for, actually, now that I'm looking at this, I'm forgetting about something. There was the building that has the mold remediation, the apartment building that we have to work at. There was 2 things that needed to be done there. The first one was there was a laundry room in the building that there was a work order put in for, essentially it was put in for cleaning. They said that there was a lot of dead bugs in there. And there was a number of bugs that had died and just were sitting on the windowsill. And the laundry room as a whole just was kind of dirty. So they wanted us to just clean it up. So I took all the employees, I had one, the other 2 met us there, and we drove over to the apartment building, and we cleaned up the laundry room. We also picked up any of the trash around the building, things like that, took care of all of that, mopped, dusted everything off, and that was a quick $150 for a service charge. After that, we were already on site. The tenant of the room that needs the mold, or the unit that needs the mold remediation, she was supposed to be out by 3 p.m. She was. And then we just needed to go in there and move the furniture out of the room or move the furniture out of the way. So that was pretty quick. But again, that was just preparing for the mold remediation that was taking place. After that, that was pretty much the day, but it was just 150 for that one project. After that, we all split up. I came back and I had my business coaching call, which in this week we dealt with. Specifically, we were talking more about marketing stuff and things having to do with our Google business profiles and a variety of different ways of leads and how to convert leads and things like that. Friday was kind of an interesting day. So I left very early on Friday because I had a plan to do a couple of different things. I had to get back to the apartment building to let the mold remediation company in. And then in addition to that, I needed to get back over there at some point after they were done to get the furniture back in the thing too. But I knew there was going to be a good chunk of time in between. So I had previously ordered an exterior door for an outbuilding for the customer where we're also doing the demo work. And the door came in this week and I need to pick it up from Menards. So the plan was go to Home Depot, get the materials I needed to do the install of the door. And then after that, head over to Menards, pick up that door. I had a storm door for another job that also came in. There was a special order storm door from Menards. That came in. That door, I wanted to drop back off at the shop. After the shop, then I went to the apartment building to let the mold remediation guy in. He takes care of that. When I leave, I go back to the house with the demo and the exterior door. My goal was to get the door swapped out. The door that is typically, I've done doors very quickly. I could get an exterior door done in about 3.5 hours in most cases, and that's including trim. And this door didn't need any trim because it was an outbuilding. That said, I show up and I made a drastic mistake and mismeasured or misremembered the measurement of the door. Thought it was a standard at 36-inch exterior door. Turns out it was a 30-inch exterior door, which is not obviously a common size. So the door that I had that I picked up from Menards was useless to me, and I needed to basically return that. I had to eat a restocking fee on that because I special ordered that, even though it wasn't custom. They don't carry it in stores, so they charge a restocking fee, which I get, it sucks, but that was my mistake. Order the new door. Of course, the new door is also going to be an extra $400 on top of what I originally paid for the original door. So my estimate is way off now because I've had to eat an extra $100 plus $400, so I'm $500 deep in that one. Luckily, the demo's for now going smoothly, so it'll somehow balance out. But again, these little mistakes, they add up very quickly. So I couldn't do the door. That was like a sucky situation because I was really hoping to get the door done. The new door should be here sometime this coming week. And then I had to order it from Home Depot, and then hopefully we'll get set with that. But after that, I kind of did some errands, took that thing back to Menards, ended up going to my mailbox to pick up a bunch of paperwork that had come in from the insurance company that I switched over to for the workman's comp liability and an umbrella policy. And then after that, went to just have some lunch because I had time to waste because the remediation guy wasn't even going to reach out till noon and let me know how long he thought he was going to be. So I had some time, went to lunch, ended up meeting up with the employees, going to back to the building. They wrapped up right when the remediation guys wrapped up right when we got there, paid them. They left, and then basically what we had to do was we had to apply plastic to all the spaces that had been cut open and the carpet area that had been removed. So we do that, and then we put the furniture back in place so that the tenants can move back in for the time being. I got a ton of pictures because the furniture is obviously going to be in the way. There is a active leak in one of the corners. There was actually active leaks in both of the corners that were a concern, but one of the corners way more because it was raining that day, just not that hard, but water was actively leaking into the room after everything had been removed. So That's something that's going to have to get taken care of right away, but is outside my control because I'm at the mercy of the property manager and the owner and what they decide to do. All I can do is try to get somebody out there to take a look at the cracks and try to get that taken care of. But again, I don't know what they're going to do. So there's all of that. So that job is wrapped up for now because that part was just the mold remediation. That was $2,600. There's one other thing that I forgot about on Wednesday. After we got done with the demo, I drove out to a town where there was another property that the property manager it's essentially a turnover. There was tenants. They're looking at doing minor enhancements to try to up the rent. So I go out there, take a look at that. To be honest, it's not a very bad situation. There's a lot of painting. The flooring's not in bad shape. The bathroom tiles are not great, but I'm not sure that they're going to want to do anything with that. There's only one room of carpet. It's not great carpet, but again, I don't know that it's worth, doing a whole room of carpet. It's also not like a main room, so I don't know what they're going to want to do with that. I still have to put together my assessment of what I would suggest to do, but it's a bunch of miscellaneous stuff. There's minor cleaning. It's mostly painting, to be honest. But and then there's a couple of minor things with some outlets need to be replaced and things like that. But for the most part, it should be a relatively simple job, but we'll see what happens with that. And obviously I don't even know if it's going to get approved because that's how this all works out sometimes. So that was on Wednesday, but for the entire week, our total for the week was $3,950, which obviously came from only two big projects and then one little tack-on thing. There's a lot of work that's ongoing right now with a lot of these different things with first trips. There's also a lot of ongoing work that should be coming in, but $3,950 is not a bad number to go. However, the one thing to keep in mind is the remediation company was $1,800 that I had to pay out for that. So if you take that out of the equation, you're looking at it's $2,100 for the week, which still is not bad considering there wasn't a ton going on this week. There's a lot of repeat or multiple visit trips. But yeah, overall for the first week with the employees, we're doing, it's going smoothly. Part of it is, I think I've said this before, one of the employees is my son. He plays football. And the other employee, I've driven him to football practice with my son multiple times. And the other employee is a friend of my son's who has been friends with my son since middle school, or junior high. So the thing is, these guys are established. I've known them for a while, so I wouldn't have necessarily hired them if I thought that they were going to be, screwing around or they were immature. They all get good grades. They all have multiple activities that keep them busy. So the thing is, I know that there's a certain level of There's a certain level of understanding that I have of what they're capable of too. I know that they're not going to be able to do certain things. I know that I have to teach them, but there's certain ways that I have to teach anybody who comes into the business. So this gives me an opportunity to hone my skills of being able to train people, but also being able to understand what could or couldn't come up when I eventually get to the point of hiring a full-time tech to come on board too. So lots of stuff going on. With all that being said, that's pretty much it for the week. There really wasn't a whole lot of outside things. I didn't work on Saturday or Sunday for the week, which it was a benefit because, to be honest, I haven't had a lot of Saturdays off recently. That said, we do have a lot of stuff going on this week. One of the employees has 2 days off this week for a family thing, so I'll have him less. On Monday, I don't have any of them because it's a project where I really don't need them and it's too far away for them to drive to, for them just to be present there. But yeah, we're juggling a lot of different projects at the same time. That's the biggest thing, is just making sure everything goes smoothly. There's a lot of new customers who are contacting me with smaller projects that need to get taken care of, and I'm trying to fit those in as I can. But yeah, for the most part, the money might not represent a ton of business, but is a lot going on, and this is way more than normal for me, like compared to a year ago. I occasionally have bigger projects, but there's been a lot of bigger projects recently. There's no way of knowing how much work is going to end up being at that apartment building that we've been working at, because eventually the drywall is going to have to get repaired, the carpet's going to have to get replaced. I don't know what exactly they're going to go, what route they're going to go. The one that we just looked at, that's going to be probably, at least $3,000 to $4,000 of work at that place. The demo job is about $4,000 that we're currently in the middle of. It's $1,000 for the drywall work. A lot of these projects are way higher priced than last year, partially because I've been making sure that I'm charging the correct amount, but also there's just more business coming in. There's a lot of stuff from Latip. In general, I sent out a couple of estimates this week that were approved. I've got more estimates I still have to put together. That porch enhancement that I was talking about, that's probably, to be honest, that's probably going to be like a $6,000 to $8,000 job, including everything, because there's just so many different components of what's going on there. Because the electrician alone is like $2,000, and there's flooring, painting, trim work. There's just a lot going on at that specific job too. So while the numbers might not reflect, the one thing you have to think about as an owner operator or a business owner is that, just because one week is not high doesn't mean the next weeks aren't going to be super high. Like going back to, the last, we talked about 2 weeks ago, the total for the week was $9,400. That's an insane amount of money for 1 week. But part of that was one of the trips that we had was $6,800, which required multiple trips over the last couple weeks. So we have slightly smaller weeks because we're fitting in those larger projects or beginning those larger projects, and then that ends up turning into massive, amounts down the line. And I say massive, that's massive for me. I know that there's guys out there who get like $60,000 checks for a deck. That's not me. Getting a $7,000 check or, a $5,000 check here or there, that's a big deal for a business that, average revenue was like $6,000 a couple years ago per month. So, it's a big deal. So yeah, there's a lot going on. That being said, if you guys have any questions about anything that I've discussed here, or you'd like more details on anything specific, leave a comment below. I've said this multiple times before. I've started to get a little bit more comments, but if you guys leave comments, I will absolutely read them. And if you're asking a specific question, I will absolutely respond to the question, or go the lengths of trying to get a short done if it's more at length that I can't explain in a simple, couple sentence response. So with all that being said, thank you to all the new subscribers. Welcome on board. Hope you guys are enjoying this. These videos that you're watching, this week in the field, that releases every Monday, and then we have another video that releases on Thursdays that talks about the inner workings of running a business. So be sure to check those out. If you're watching this and you're thinking to yourself, man, some of these videos are just so long, I don't know that I could sit through 50 minutes of listening to this guy talk. This is also available in podcast form. You go to YouTube Music, search Handyman in the Field, and you'll find this show, which is called This Week in the Field, which is in audio form. I know that a lot of you could just watch or just listen to this and not necessarily need to see me or see the before and after photos, which is really the only visual elements that get seen in these videos. So that's an option as well. If you are enjoying it, please like. Obviously, if you're not subscribed, subscribe, and then share the videos with other guys that who might get something out of this. With all of that being said, I thank you guys so much for watching. Appreciate it a lot. We'll see you guys next time.